Hey there, I'm Matthew, and today I'm going to show you how you can run interactive inference with Oumi via the Oumi command line interface, or CLI. Now, let me pop open the Oumi docs so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. This is oumi.ai/docs for reference, but let me point out how we actually run inference in Oumi. Now, Oumi is a machine learning framework, so we can, of course, run inference on models, and we'll look today at large language models and some multimodal models with vision incorporated. So for inference, we're going to leverage inference engines for actually talking to these models. Now, you don't have to worry too much about what an inference engine is. Inference engines are just ways in which you can generate responses from models. You can see here that we have a list of engines that we support. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but we'll demo a few for you, specifically the native engine, VLLM, and several remote engines. Note that when we say a remote engine, this is just usually what you do when talking to an API like OpenAI API, Google Gemini API, or Anthropic. When you're talking to a model that's behind some API, you can communicate with it via Oumi using a remote inference engine. So let's get started. Inference in Oumi uses configurations, and this lets you specify the model you want to talk to, as well as exactly how that model is going to generate a response. And you're in luck because we have some configurations automatically set up for you. So if we go to the Oumi GitHub repo today, you can actually get started with just about any model you'd like to. So we'll go into configs and recipes, and we'll pick a model that we want to use for inference. I'm going to use small m because this is a model just about anyone can use. The model is only 135 million parameters. So we'll go into our inference config, and we don't have to download the file. Actually, we'll just copy the path to the file, and we'll pop open our terminal. So let me minimize that to get it out of the way. And here's our terminal. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show you, I have Oumi installed. We'll just run Oumi infer so you can see the exact parameters that we're going to deal with when running inference. You'll see that Oumi infer is the command to run inference on a model in Oumi. Now, this requires just a configuration file and a few optional parameters like interactive inference, which is what we'll use today, images, system prompts, things like that. Now, inference specifies that for a configuration file, you must have a path to a configuration file. We don't quite have that. We have, a path within a GitHub repository, but lucky for us, Oumi can download that file for us, so you don't have to actually go and write these files or download them yourself. Oumi will take care of it for you. So let's go ahead and run inference. We're going to do Oumi infer, specify our config, and now since we didn't download the file, if we want to tell Oumi to download it for us, we're just going to add the Oumi prefix, which is OUMI or Oumi : / and the path that we copied. This is just the path in GitHub. We're going to add the -i flag at the end to make sure we're doing interactive inference, and we should be good to go. So let's run inference. Now, the first time you run inference, this may take a minute or two. I have the model already downloaded. It's cached because I've run through this before. For folks who haven't, it may take, a minute or two to download it from Hugging Face. All right, we are good to go. We can enter our input prompt. So let's do so. Let's say, what is your name? And we'll get out a response. The response says, my name is Kaylin Blackwood, and I'm a skilled and dedicated AI assistant. Wonderful. Okay, so inference works as we'd expect. Now note that this is single turn inference, so even though I can send another message, this is going to be considered a new conversation. We're just taking one input and generating one output. All right, I'm going to exit out of that inference, and now I'm going to show you how, say you want to modify inference yourself, how you can actually do that here. I was using the native inference engine, but if I want to use a different inference engine, you can actually just specify that on the command line. So I'm going to hit the up arrow key here on my terminal just to bring back the last command I ran. And now I'm going to switch inference engines completely. So here we have a configuration file. This was working for small m. It was using the native inference engine. Now, if I want to switch the inference engine I'm using, it's pretty easy. I just have to specify -- engine and choose the new engine I want to use. In this case, we'll use VLLM. And let's run inference again. Now, VLLM will take a little bit longer to set up. The native engine is just using local PyTorch, so it's going to be pretty fast. VLLM has a little bit of overhead before it actually gets things set up. All right, we can see the model is being instantiated. We've allocated memory. And I think we are just about good to go. Yes, we are. All right, and let's ask it a new question. We'll say, what is your favorite name? My favorite name is Eleanor. Wonderful. All right, we're going to close out of this as well. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the inference configuration we actually used. I haven't gone over this, but I'll touch on it briefly. So the inference configuration we used, if I can pull this up, does specify a few different parts, and I'll touch on them lightly. There's way more depth in our documentation, but the inference configuration is broken up into a few parts. The first is the model configuration. This tells you what model we're going to load. Specifically, the model name can point to a model in Hugging Face, like it is here, or it can point to a directory. Say you trained a model with Oumi, you can actually go ahead and run inference on that model just by pointing straight to the directory there. Additionally, there's the generation parameters. So generation parameters are what you would really expect, what most of you have probably used for talking to models, like using the OpenAI API like ChatGPT. You can specify the temperature, top P, different things like that. Here, we're just specifying the max number of tokens and a batch size, which isn't really relevant to us. We also specified the engine, which we saw was native, and we tested VLM as well. Cool. So now let's show how things work if we want to run a multimodal model. So let's do a vision model. All right. We're going to go ahead and go back and grab a configuration and a recipe. And let's go into vision this time. Now we're going to grab Lava 7B. This is a somewhat large model, so I'm going to run this on a GPU, but I'll show you exactly how inference works for images. So once again, we're going to grab our inference config. This is also the native inference engine just to get us started there. All right, now we are good to go. So remember, if we look at Oumi, Oumi Infer, when we're on inference, we can specify the config, interactive mode, and also an image to use. So let's get things set up first. We'll say Oumi Infer. We're going to add our prefix for the configuration. Going to go interactive mode. And now let's choose an image. So let's pop open this guy and let's use an image of me. Why not? So we'll go to just our website, grab an image of me, just copy this, minimize this guy since we're done with it. All right, and let's add that image. And we should be good to go. Now, this model is much bigger. This is a 7 billion parameter model. If you have not downloaded it before, it will take a good amount of time to download, so just be aware of that. I have pre-cached the model just for the sake of this video, so it doesn't take forever. But you'll see now the model's loading into memory, and then we'll be good to send an inference request. All right, let's give it a prompt. We'll say, what is this photo of? It says, this image features a young man with short hair wearing a gray shirt and smiling for the camera. He appears to be posing for a... So it's interesting, it cut off early. Well, we can figure out exactly why that happened, and it's fairly straightforward. If we go ahead and look at the inference command, or inference config, that we ran, let's pop it open here, we'll see that the max new tokens here is set to 32. So that means only 32 tokens can be output. Now, I don't want to download a new configuration file, but I want to run inference and get a full response. So let's fix that. In the command line, you can override these parameters. Similar to how we changed the engine before, we can actually go ahead and change some of these parameters. So let's say I want to then override our generations field and specifically the max new tokens field. So we'll do generations, generation dot max underscore new underscore tokens. And let's set this equal to 100. And let's run inference. Now what this should do is this is going to use the exact same inference config that we had before, but it's going to modify this specific parameter. That way we don't have to, download a new file, save a new file each time I want to just tweak different parts of inference. All right, and let's ask the same question. Let's say, what is in this photo? And we'll see the image features a young man with short hair wearing a gray shirt and smiling for the camera. He appears to be posing for a picture, possibly in a studio setting. And now we get the complete response. So obviously, our inference did take into account that change in inference parameters. Now, one last thing we're going to do is we're going to use remote inference, and we're going to build a config on the fly for this. I'm going to show you how to run inference against either, the OpenAI API or Google Gemini. So let's get started with that. Let me go ahead and minimize this just to get some stuff off the screen. And let's pop open a text editor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this remote.yaml. Let me zoom in a little bit so this is easier for you to see. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new inference configuration together. So we want to specify a model. We know that we want to talk to, in this case, we'll talk to Gemini. So we're going to create a model, and we're going to specify the model name. Now the model name we're going to use is going to be Gemini 2.0 Flash, just for the example. And out of the box, we actually do have an inference engine for this, so I'll just let you know here. It's going to be engine, and it's going to be Google Gemini. We'll save that guy. And that's all we should need to run inference against the Google Gemini API. Do note, I already set my API key. I'm not going to set that here because I don't want anyone stealing my API key, but we should be good to run inference now. So let's give that guy a try. We're going to run Oumi infer -c, and now we have to specify the path to this configuration file. Before we were using the Oumi prefix because we were downloading it remotely, but now it's local. So I can just do /remote.yaml and specify interactive inference, and we're off to the races. And now once my connection has been initialized, we can enter a prompt. Let's just say, what is your name? And we get a response immediately from Google. I am a large language model trained by Google. Great. So we're talking to the correct API. Awesome. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's do the exact same thing that we did last time. Let's go ahead and, without modifying our configuration file, let's switch this to use OpenAI. So I'm going to use the exact same command as last time. This is our remote.yaml, but we're going to override just about everything. There's only really 2 fields to override here, though. We're going to switch the engine. So we're going to say we're going to use engine equals OpenAI, and we're going to change our model name. Let me just zoom in so you can see this a little bit more clearly. But we're going to set our model name, so -model.model name is equal to, and we're going to use GPT, let's use 4.0 mini, oops, it's 4.0, not 4.0. Okay, and let's give this a whirl. All right, and let's say, what is your name? And we'll get the response, I am called ChatGPT. How can I assist you today? Perfect. So we have successfully modified our remote configuration to not only talk to a remote API, but it's switched from Google Gemini over to OpenAI in one line of code, just one input in the CLI. Awesome. Well, that's all I'm going to cover today in terms of actually using Oumi inference. You'll see a few videos we'll have following up for how to run inference using a set of inputs stored in files, batch inference, as well as tutorials for training, the LLM judge, and model evaluation. So if you have any questions or things you'd like to see, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.